They did set up a steering committee, and they came to church board this month, and we do have a supported motion from the church board on moving forward on this. We do have Gene Hollenberg. He's going to do a presentation on what it would look like first. Then we are going to open it up to questions from everybody on what our next steps and moving forward, and then we'll take a vote if the congregation wants to continue moving forward or not. So, Gene, please give us your presentation.
Well, I'm hoping my voice carries through on all this. This presentation will be given as if this is already passed, and that's just so that you know what this is all going to be like if we do decide to move forward. So don't think that I'm trying to push us in any way. I'm just wanting to make sure that you know what it looks like. So the refugee program is very different than it was in the past. When Union Center did this before, I was in high school the first time, and then I was just starting my educational career at the time that you brought the second group of refugees through. I wasn't anywhere near here at that time, but I hear great stories. The difference is that in those days, you simply said that you were willing to bring a family in and that you were going to support them, and there was very, very little in terms of support for that. Well, that's not the case anymore. Right now, Brethren Disaster Ministries is working with Church World Service, and through that process, there is a great deal of support. And so let me talk you through a little bit of what this looks like. So far, we've had 2 general meetings where we've called anyone who wants to come, and we've had good turnout. We've had 17 and 20 in those 2 meetings. We've had 2 board updates, the last one just occurring a month ago. We have presented at council in February so that there is some understanding of what this looks like to some degree, at least what we knew at that point. We've created a steering committee. We have had 2 of those meetings, and those have been in the afternoons. They've been fairly heavy agenda meetings. The steering committee has had basic training with Church World Service. That basic training is an orientation that takes about 2 hours online, and it involves the easiest quizzes I've ever taken in my life. And then today. So that's really the work that has happened so far. The steering committee consists of myself, Ryan McBride, Nancy Mishler, Jenny Ramirez, and Holly Yoder, and then Pastor Frank joins us as an ex officio member of that committee. And they have been very committed, and there have been really, really good energy that's come from that. We need to stress that there is one and only one goal, and that's to help a family. That's the goal. Church World Service works hard at really driving this home, that this is not about evangelism. It's not about, trying to make people conform to whatever it is that we think they ought to be doing. It is helping them to be integrated into the community. So part of the process for anyone who's involved with this is that they will learn that. I mean, that's part of the orientation that takes place. So, and I'll go back and say, Byron, you hit us well, Matthew 25. That's where we started. The process is that we plan, and we have committees. There are 6 of them. Those committees plan for what it will look like, and they have to start their planning not knowing what the family will look like. The family could be a single person. The family could be 2 adults. The family could be 1 adult and 5 children. I mean, we don't know what that looks like. And so the committees plan for all kinds of different possibilities in terms of what happens. There is also, during this time period, during the planning period, lots of communication with Church World Service. There are some things that the committees have to do first. For example, we have to decide which community we're going to become a part of. This committee may not, the family may not be in Napanee. And that could be for a wide variety of reasons, including available housing. It could be for the opportunities at school. It could be for transportation reasons. But we're looking basically at 4 different communities as possible. And those 4 communities would be Napanee, Bremen, Wakarusa, and Goshen. So those are the 4 areas that have been brought up most as the possible places for this group to work. So we have to have plans for what does it look like to do housing in any of those areas. What are the options that are available? And when we look at those options, that helps us determine which community is going to be the best. And Church World Service will be working with us in that process. Then in preparation, we will have to, once they say, yes, you're part of the program, when that is determined, then we have to secure housing, and we have to develop the transportation plan. We have to allow for cultural adjustment and how that's going to occur. And then we have to make community connections so that they are supported by whatever services are available in this area, and they can access them quickly. The process continues then with the welcome. So once the family is identified, we have anywhere from 2 days to 1 week notice when the family is identified and when they're coming. So it's, you have to be ready to go. And that means that we pick them up, we settle them in a home that is already furnished, and the kitchen is completely stocked, and they're ready to go. So that it is more than turnkey. It is, it's completely, I don't know, what do you call it? You drop right into it. You're right there. So we also then, once we welcome them, a translator will be part of that process, and we will provide a meal and orientation for them. And the orientation is really just to the house or the place they're living. So they know how to work the stove, and they know how to lock the doors, and they know how to turn on the shower, and all of those kinds of things, which may not be quite so difficult, because if we're talking about Afghan refugees, most of them have been in the United States for a while, and they have been at a military base and have had some of this orientation already. We just don't know what that's going to look like. Once they're here, we will assist them. We'll establish the kinds of community connections that they need. We will get them enrolled in school if they're children. We will get them part of English language classes for adults and children. We'll get them enrolled in Medicaid and other services that would be available to folks living in this area. And then the process is for us to teach them independence. And that's really what happens from the time they arrive, is for us to begin to teach them what it's like to live here and to become independent. And the goal is that at the end of 90 days, which is the period of support that we have from Church World Service, at the end of 90 days, they will be independent. That doesn't mean they won't need us. I think they probably will, because there will be questions that weren't anticipated that they will need to have answers to. And so we'll be there, and we are in it for as long as they want us to be in it. And then integration into the community is the final piece of that puzzle for us. So the committees, what do? Well, they plan. They research. They consider whatever possibilities there are. They prepare by making decisions about those things. They get ready for the family to arrive, and then they follow the family's lead in meeting their needs. So there's certain core responsibilities that we have that we will do, but for the most part, once they are here, most of what we do is follow their lead. Where they need assistance, we provide assistance. Where they do not need assistance, we provide whatever support they need. So here are the committees. Housing. You're going to consider what are the best housing alternatives. You'll make the initial contacts with the housing representatives. That means if it's an apartment or if it's a house or whatever it happens to be, working with the landlords. Procuring the model, procuring whatever furnishings are needed. That would include appliances and everything else. Preparing the housing for arrival, so going in, doing some decorating, making sure that the beds are made and everything's ready for people to just come in, because they will likely be tired and overwhelmed on that first day. And so we want them to just feel like they can come in, they can enjoy a meal. We will prepare a meal, but they will eat it without us. We'll give them the basics they need to go to get through the night, and we'll leave and let them be a family in that home. And then teach the family to be independent. So all along the way, what are the kinds of home maintenance things they need to continue to do? What happens if they're in an apartment and a water line breaks? What do? Well, one of the things they need to know is how to turn off the water, and the next thing they need to know is who do they call? And we want them to call the landlord and not us. And that's because that's what is expected. Transportation, consider what the transportation alternatives are. Develop a transportation plan. In that plan, work at how we wean them off of us to their taking care of their own transportation, and then assist the family to be independent. You see that theme through all of these committees. The health committee will be finding basic health services and assisting the family in accessing services like Medicaid or other kinds of services that will help them, and then teach them how to be independent. One of the examples they give in the orientation is that when the family is making appointments, doctor's offices are required to have translators. And so we will find a place where we can be certain that that is the case. But then for them to say, we can stand there with them, but for them to make the phone call, to set up the appointment, to do the actual work of getting the service. Cultural adjustment. This committee is one that will really do most of its work after they have arrived. They'll do a lot of research in terms of where places are and what the family needs to know. But for the most part, they will be the ones who will talk with them about all the little things about adjusting to American life. And Holly put it really well. It's like bringing in an exchange student. I mean, they know nothing about things, and we need to teach them how to survive in the community they're in. This committee will also connect them to culturally appropriate communities in the area. So for example, if it's an Afghan family, which likely will be, although it's possible it could be Ukrainian, but if it's an Afghan family that comes in, finding a Muslim community, finding a community of Afghans who are already integrated into this area so that they have the option of doing some things together. Excuse me. Recruiting volunteer tutors to help them with things. Some of the things that are harder to learn than just an orientation. And then teach them to be independent. Schooling. This is really about getting everybody enrolled in school. And one of the things that will be a big piece to this in choosing the community is finding the community that has the best schooling options for children. That's going to be important. Not all school districts in this area are equal in terms of their resources for people who have English as a second language or are coming from a different culture. So researching that, preparing the schools for the family arrival, trust me, the principal will want to know that this family is coming. It's not always a good idea to surprise people. Enrolling children in school, and that is, again, assisting the family to do that, so it's going with them, helping them to understand the questions that are being asked, but not doing it for them. Arranging for English instruction for adults and children, advocating for the family if issues arise. So, when somebody does something at school and it's a big, major blow up, working with the administrators to try and make sure that that's going to work. And then teaching them to be independent. Jobs and Finance is the last committee. This group, there is financial support that comes from Church World Service for those 90 days. And so that financial support has to all be spent on the family. And when that money comes in, it has to be in a specific account, and someone has to administer that account. So that's part of it. But then the other part of it is really looking at what things are happening with expenses with this family over that 3-month period. And with that 3-month period, looking to see what does the budget look like? What can we do for that? What kind of jobs are people going to have to support that budget, to do those kinds of things? So you'll be working on creating a budget with the family, and then you'll provide help with them over the year probably afterwards as budget issues occur. Also helping to find jobs for people in the families, so jobs for the adults. So funding, Church World Service provides money for each member of the family that's here for this first 90 days. Union Center may have to provide deposits for housing and other services, the electrical, the gas, all those kinds of things. The steering committee has talked about the possibility that an answer to transportation, particularly if they're in Napanee or Bremen, or Wakarusa for that matter, the answer to that may be getting them ready to drive and getting them licenses and having a vehicle available. One of the things that we don't do is we don't loan them money. But what we could do is we could purchase a vehicle that would be nicer than they might be able to get with what limited resources they have to start with. We might be able to purchase a vehicle and then lease it back, or have them make payments on it so that the money could come back. Then they would be responsible for that. They would start to develop a car payment as part of what they do. And so that then helps them, again, to become more independent in this area where cars are more important. And then the steering committee estimates that we need about $20,000 in seed money. And I think Rodney will talk about that in a little bit. How can you help? Well, join a committee. By the way, if you didn't see it this morning, if you were in Sunday school, if you didn't see it, next to the kitchen is a sign-up sheet. And we're going to need to have 2 to 4 people on every committee. I am in the process right now of recruiting committee chairs. We have 4 of the 6 at this point. I'm waiting to talk to a couple more folks. So I'm in the process of doing that right now. What will happen is that you'll have a chance to sign up for whatever committee you're most interested in helping. And when you do that, what you're committing to do is likely meet for, once every week or 2 weeks for a little while until you get that research done and some of those things that happen. And when you feel like you're prepared, you won't be, but you'll be as prepared as you possibly can be. And when we find out when that family is, that committee is going to have to meet right away and say, okay, are we ready? What do we have to do? And so that's what you're committing to if you're going to be on a committee. We don't need everybody on a committee, but we need everybody committed to this process if it's going to work. We're going to have to really count on everyone to do that. And if you have any possibility of being on one of those committees, I certainly urge you to do that. At the end of this week, hopefully we'll have all of our chairs in place, And at that point, chairs will look at who's signed up in their committees, and they may start recruiting you. So be aware that if you don't sign up, you still may get a little tap on the shoulder. You can provide clothing and furnishings, appliances, the things that they're going to need to furnish the housing. You can assist with transportation. Particularly, that will be important in the first couple of months. You can donate money to the cause, and that can come back to the church and can be used for purchasing some of the furnishings that we can't get donated. You can respond to the committee requests for help along the way. And you can pray, and all of us can certainly do that. So here's your invitation. Each one of us has an opportunity now to respond to that question. When did I see you? And that's important. You know, I worry about that sometimes because Byron talked about awareness. I worry about, you know, where am I unaware? Well, we're making everyone aware at this time. And it's a real opportunity. This church is at its best when it's working together on a project. I know that. When we first joined this church, that was happening. And all through the years that we've been here, can't believe it's been 20 years already. But in all the years that we've been here, this church is at its best when it's working together on a project. And this is your opportunity. Donations can be made anytime. Assisting the family will require an orientation and a background check. So if you're going to be interfacing with anyone in the family, doing some kind of work, tutoring or working on a committee or any of those kinds of things, you'll be required to do that 2-hour course that the steering committee's already done. It's really not horrible. It's not professional either, but it's not horrible. And
when you fail a part of the test, you can take it over again as many times as you need to.
yep, and there's
Speaking from experience.
there's only one question at the end of each unit. So they're
Can I interrupt a second? And you can do it in segments, because there are some segments that are like 9 minutes, 7 minutes, there's only one, I think it's 20. So I would do it and then, do something else, and then do it the next day or whatever.
right. I did mine over 3 days. So, you can do that, but if you're going to be involved, you need to do that course, and you also need to do a background check. And we will be using the same form that we use for working with the children. Then, if you are a person who's going to be providing transportation, you also then will require the motor vehicle record check. And that's part of the background check process. It's just going to cost us another $5. That's what that means. Because they want to make sure that they don't have people who get in a lot of accidents and, have less than stellar driving records driving folks around. And that's protection for us as a church. And then receiving, so anybody who will be working with the funds, anybody who will have the ability to receive or distribute the funds will also have to have a credit check. Now, Jobs and Finance Committee, they don't all have to do that because they won't be receiving or distributing funds, everyone. It'll probably be 1 or 2 people who will do that, and they will then have a credit check as part of what they do. This is a great opportunity, I believe, and certainly we've been talking about it for a while. Again, this is what it looks like if we pass this, and we're certainly open to whatever questions you have.
I know one of the biggest questions everybody has is the $20,000 that the steering committee has asked about the church. It's amazing how it works. Some time ago, Clio and Nita Frederick left memorial funds to the church. They have one that's designated for peace and justice. And that's a very tough category to spend money on. So when they asked about that, I said something to Kevin. I said, what do you think? He goes, yeah. So I was able to get a hold of Judy, their daughter, this weekend, and she was thrilled. She said her mom and dad would be very proud and supportive of using their memorial money to help support a refuge resettlement family. Their gift should cover the $20,000 that it is, so it would not be coming out of our budget at this time. And so we should be covered there, so we don't want you to be hindrance on the financial side of it, that people before us have thought through and left us the funds to do this mission work. So now we would like to open it up for any further questions, discussion before we take a vote. Jill?
I just have a simple question. So if you don't know the size of the family or, how do you figure out housing until you know if it's one person or 10 people?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, really, we've talked about this, and part of this is stepping out of faith, that we will have the resources once that family is determined. Another part of it is that I believe that we'll have more opportunity to communicate with Church World Service as we move down the road. And so they'll at least know what our parameters might be.
Ryan?
Ultimately, to add with that, we need to make connections now and find out where housing is available. So we need to find housing for maybe 1 or 2 people. We need to find housing for maybe 3 generations in one house. That committee's job will be to find the options that are available. So it's broad, it's not specific. Other thing to add to that, Gene pointed out that we have tentatively started focusing on 4 areas. If this committee gets going and they find that there's another area that we've missed, we're not going to stop them from going to that area and figuring out what's going on and if that's the best place for them. This was our brainstorming and our thoughts. We don't have all the answers. We don't have, and we're never going to claim that. So if something pops up and says, hey, this would be a great place, then we've got to, it would be our responsibility to go and look and figure out if that really works.
Also, along those lines, when we have a committee of 5 or 6 people thinking, we are limited, but we have a congregation of many more people who may have many more connections or ears in the community that can help us. So there's hope.
And I would add to that, the chairs of the committees will all be on the steering committee. That's where the coordination takes place. So basically what the steering committee has done up to this point is to do the research and to figure out how we're going to approach it. But the committees will then kind of take it from there, and the steering committee will coordinate among those committees.
One thing that over the past couple of years, I've viewed a couple of independent films that have been out. One is called The Good Lie, and the other one's called Limbo. And it's the people that produce these films had a lot of insight into what refugees go through and what's going through their minds when they come to this country. And they're powerful, powerful films. And a lot of times when those refugees come, we think, yeah, we know what you need. And you're coming to this great country. But it is a struggle for them. Mentally, and a lot of those people did not want to leave home. And a lot of them had dreams of going back. So if you get a chance to watch those films, Limbo and The Good Lie, they really give you some insight. And I think they're just really good. It really, I've watched them 2 or 3 times each, because each time I watch them, I see something or I hear something I didn't see before. So, you know, it's just a suggestion, but they've really given me some insight to what the refugees are going through. We just think, oh, we're so much above them, and we got all this to offer to them. But, you know, really, you know, just coming down to their level is the most difficult thing it is for me. And so I think that, you know, if you get a chance to watch those, please do.
Nick, can you find those on YouTube or?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix, anyone, but they're independent films, but, and I've watched them on HBO, but The Good Lie and Limbo.
Reese Witherspoon produced The Good Life, so it should be out, you know, more easily accessible than Limbo, I think.
If there's no further questions, we do have a supported motion from the board that Union Center Church of the Brethren move forward on having a resettlement of a refuge family.
Are you ready for the question? I believe we're ready. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.